When flipping through this year's Old Farmers Almanac, you might notice a local feature. Jane Stevens farms 130 acres in the Baraboo Bluffs called 4 Elements Organic Herbals. She's a horticulture graduate from UW-Madison, and she's got a long career in herbalism. Her article in the Almanac is a guide for readers to start looking to the night sky to help make decisions on the farm. She tells us how she got connected with the Old Farmers Almanac.
As I was a young horticulturist and herbalist developing my trade, I just started picking up the Old Farmers Almanac, and that was probably 35 years ago, maybe 1990 or so. There's these charts in the back that say, best time for harvesting, best time for planting above ground crops, best time for planting below ground crops. And I just followed that chart for really decades. Well, when COVID hit, I started taking astrology classes to really understand the energy behind these planetary movements more. And at the same time, I'd been doing my business for so long that I wanted to write a book. I pitched the idea to Chelsea Green, which is really one of the best publishers for gardening and back to the earth kind of books, and they took me up on it. So I wrote a book called The Celestial Garden, Growing Herbs, Vegetables, and Flowers in Sync with the Moon and Zodiac. After writing that book, that's how the Old Farmers Almanac got a hold of me. And I was pretty thrilled because they were I was their biggest fan. I looked in my old archives, and I still had Old Farmers Almanacs that I'd saved from the 1980s.
So, Jane, you use the Old Farmers Almanac astrology section to learn about the moon phase and how that impacts energy or the success of certain farm chores. Do you think agriculturists depend on that type of information today?
That is a great question because I have seen that the Old Farmers Almanac, that chart that I was referring to, has really expanded to more everyday, even like urban people could use. Like, when is the best time to get a haircut? Best day for travel, things like that. I think that agriculture, in a way, is at this point kind of like our country, really divided in their methods because there's a really strong growing movement on organic and regenerative ag. I'd be curious to know if the farmers who aren't organic would use it. I don't really know.
It can be hard to explain to someone else that it's not snake oil.
That's the truth.
How do you back up your claim that following the moon signs, moon phases, actually pans out?
I have my career in herbalism, which, believe me, I have to learn how to justify snake oil. So, because people aren't used to nature being their partner. Like, our culture has diverged so far from knowing that really the earth is here to support us. We're coming from generations of conquer what nature does to bend it to our will. And we're finally, well, that's not the right way to put it, but it is becoming evident that really nature has the upper hand on all of this. And, we need to really be paying more attention. We can start with the example you gave, which was when the tide rises, us in the Midwest don't realize that the water table is rising too. And so because I'm so into this, every time I talk to a doctor, surgeon, EMT, I had an opportunity to go visit the crime lab last week with my daughter because that's her area of interest. And sure enough, all these people who are in public service notice that at the full moon there's increased activity. So I think most people do understand that. That's kind of basic. And anyone who stood or lived near the ocean knows that at a full moon, the tide is higher. So with that basic premise, you have, your legs to stand on, and you can start from there.
Jane Stevens, along with us. She was one of the featured authors in the 2025 Old Farmers Almanac. Jane uses astrology information on her farm, 4 Elements Organic Herbals. It spans about 130 acres in the Baraboo Bluffs. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Stephanie Hoff.